Hey guys, welcome to this week's session in our series called Mission Control. This session I'm calling Your Goals Suck. Why the process matters more than the result. So, your goals don't really suck. I'm actually a big fan of goals. In fact, the bigger the goal, the better as far as I'm concerned. I have all of my clients prepare 180-day goals for me immediately when we start working together. The idea is that if they have something to focus on and work toward, that they'll have a better chance of achieving it, or at least getting closer than they would have without a defined goal. But here's the question that I've asked myself for many, many years. Are goals really the reason we succeed? And without a doubt, I know that the answer is no, they're not. After all, we all have the same amount of hours in the week. And in those hours, some people manage extraordinary feats while others kind of barely manage to get by each day. And I've known folks that have amazing goals. They're perfect. They're beautiful. And they don't accomplish them. And I've seen folks that have okay goals and they smash them. So the question that I often ask is, are goals really the difference? What about intelligence? What about drive? What about opportunity? What about something else? So over the years, I've studied and implemented lots and lots of goal setting systems, and I like goal setting systems in general. The SMART goal method, where we look at specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, or achievable, realistic, and timely goals. Or the BHAG system, which I think comes from Jim Collins, this idea of big, hairy, audacious goals. Or even the 12-week year system that I use a lot with my clients from Brian Moran. Okay, so I've used lots of these. And I personally and my clients have written some truly kick-ass goals, like work of art goals, like just beautiful, flowing, amazing goals. They're perfectly crafted. They've ticked all the boxes. They motivate me and my clients in all sorts of ways. But eventually, I began to realize that my results had very little to do with the goals I set and nearly everything to do with the processes I created and I followed. Let me say that again. My results had very little to do with the goals I set and nearly everything to do with the processes I created and followed. So you see, what I've found is that simply setting a goal isn't enough. In fact, setting a goal, even if it's a SMART goal, that part oftentimes doesn't necessarily matter. Okay? It just needs to be something that you want to achieve. And we can add these other pieces to it, and that's great. But setting that goal isn't enough. We have to implement and execute a solid process over time to achieve it. And there's a psychological reason for this. Your brain doesn't know the difference between setting goals and achieving them. This is why you feel so accomplished when you've spent all that time and you've set good goals, right? You set this out, you got goal 1A, 1B, 1C, and you feel like you've really achieved something. You've set good goals. Setting goals changes our self-identity in very real and concrete ways because our brains can't tell the difference between what we want and what we already have. Excuse me. That means our brains incorporate our goals into our current self-image as if we've already achieved them. Our brains incorporate our goals into our current self-image as if we've already achieved them. So, goals are great, though, for setting direction. If I were to simply say to you, go there, the very first question you would ask me is, go where? So once we determine that and we make the decision on the destination, it's time to put the plans and the action into action. It's time to actually move, okay? So here's the thing. Here are a handful of problems that arise when you spend too much time thinking about your goals and not enough time designing your systems. And after we go through this, I'm going to give you 4 or 5 ways tricks that I've been able to successfully use over time to keep my focus on the process other than the goal. Okay? But here are the problems first and foremost, with thinking about your goals and not spending enough time designing your systems. Number one is survivorship bias. And what that means is winners and losers have the same goals. In a book that James Clear wrote called Atomic Habits, he tells us that winners and losers have the same goals. It's a pretty simple statement, and that's what makes it so beautiful. When we view performance, we tend to set our focus on those who end up winning, the survivors. Okay, so we have this bias toward them, and we assume that this lofty and ambitious goal led to their success. But if we really think about it, didn't the losing party have the same goals? Doesn't every team want to win? So that makes us ask the question, what differentiates the winners from the losers? And it's certainly not the goal itself, because the goal of every soccer game is to win the game. So it's no secret that I am a huge Alabama football fan. Roll Tide. Most people assume I'm such a big fan because Nick Saban's team has managed to win 7 national championships. But that's only part of the story. While it's really super exciting to back a team that wins, and by the way, Alabama wasn't always a winning team, and I've been a fan for a long time, it's even more interesting to me to dig into why they win. And Alabama wins because of a thing that Coach Saban calls the process. Instead of focusing on the end result, Saban gives this intense, nearly maniacal focus on the process. And here's a quote from Nick Saban that actually is on my wall. It says, "Don't think about winning the SEC championship. Don't think about the national championship. Think about what you needed to do on this drill, on this play, in this moment. That's the process. Let's think about what we can do today, the task at hand." So don't get me wrong. Do I think that Coach Saban's goal is to win the national championships each year? Yes. But after the direction is set, he focuses on the process. So number one challenge is survivorship bias. Okay? Instead of just looking at their goals, we need to be looking at their process. Number two problem with goals is that goals are temporary. Unfortunately, achieving a goal only changes our lives for a moment. So in 2014, I completed the Leadville 100 mountain bike race, and I finished in roughly the top half of all racers. It was an amazing feat for me, and I basked in that moment. But at the awards ceremony just 24 hours later, they were handing out awards to people who had done this same feat 10 times, even a few who had done it 20 times. My single completion seemed insignificant to me at that point. Just 24 hours after the event, my major goal seemed insignificant. Think about that. I'd spent years on this, but my goal seemed insignificant. On top of that, completing this race that some consider to be, quote unquote, one of the hardest in the world, I heard of many more significant races that are thought to be even harder, even more significant, that they lie ahead. So that's the thing about improvement, right? We keep chasing results when the results are actually not the real problem. The results are temporary. What we really need to change or adopt are the processes that cause great results. In order to make change last, we must solve problems at the systems level. So the second problem with goals is that they're temporary. Now the third problem is that achieving goals doesn't make us happy. In 2012, when I was 39, I went to a friend of mine who's a coach and a fitness trainer, and I told him that I'd like to be in the best shape of my life by the time I was 40, right? He absolutely laughed at me and said, "Chad, it's going to take us 3 to 5 years just to see what your body can do. It makes absolutely no sense to focus on getting in the best shape of your life. That's not what's going to make you happy. What's going to make you happy is changing your lifestyle once and for all." And now, almost 10 years later, I can tell you he was so right. I eventually did get into the best shape of my life. And while it felt great to look and feel so good, the new lifestyle that I had adopted was so much more fulfilling than the result. That lifestyle was nothing more than a set of consistent behaviors that I integrated into my daily life. So here's the challenge is once we achieve a goal, we assume that then we'll be happy. The problem with this is that we're constantly equating happiness with achievement. We're putting off happiness until we hit our next milestone. So once we hit the milestone, we fall back into the trap of needing the next goal in order to be happy, and the next goal, and the next goal. And I'm here to tell you, and you know this if you think about your goals, this is absolutely no way to live. Also, what happens is, what happens if for some reason we don't achieve our goal, right? We become miserable and disappointed and we feel like failures. When we fall in love with the process instead of the product, we don't have to defer happiness. We can be happy at any time during the process, knowing that we're putting in the work that will eventually result in achievements that were previously beyond our imagination. So problem number 3 is that achieving goals doesn't just make us happy. The fourth problem with only focusing on goals is that goals can create this yo-yo effect. So many people, some of you on this call, know that we're able to lose weight by working hard for months, exercising daily, drastically changing our diets. But as soon as we lose the weight, cut back on the exercising, cheat a little bit on the diet, most of us eventually gain much or all of the weight back. The goal is no longer there to motivate us. And the habits weren't sustainable. They were push and pull kind of habits. So when all of our hard work is focused on a singular goal, the motivation to continue the work after we achieve it is gone. So we go through this back and forth process of setting goals, achieving them, and then falling back into old habits. By focusing on building and honoring processes, regardless of the goals that we've set, this allows us to continue making progress over time, longer time. This longer term thinking allows us to no longer be stuck in this yo-yo cycle, but to move into a more productive cycle of continuous refinement and improvement, continuing to move forward, even if it's not quite as fast or as quick as maybe we would have liked it before. Okay? So this continuous refinement and improvement, this type of thinking, these goals can now exist to simply punctuate our improvements over time. So there's the 4 challenges with really relying on goals and spending too much time. Number 1 is survivorship bias. Number 2 is that goals are temporary. Number 3 is that achieving them doesn't necessarily make us happy, and that these goals, this goal focus can achieve this yo-yo effect. Okay, so how do we learn to love the process? So even though I've said all this, I don't believe that goals are useless. I simply believe that too much focus on goals doesn't allow us to achieve true progress. So we focus on goals believing that their achievement will somehow make us happy, when in reality, a strong focus on changing the processes, the habits, is really what's going to lead us to fulfillment. So by learning to love the process as much as we believe that we will love the achievement of the goal, we can find happiness and fulfillment in the journey and not just the destination. So I know it sounds super duper boring to focus on the process. Processes just simply aren't as sexy as goals. So there have been several tricks that I've been able to successfully use over and over again to help keep my focus and my clients' focus on the process rather than the goal. Okay? So there's 4 of them. Number 1, make the process simple. Too often when we're striving to make change, we overcomplicate the process. This is called, we have a complexity bias. So we think there must be more to solving a problem than meets the eye. When in fact, most of the time, the simple solution, Occam's razor, is the best solution. Processes should absolutely not need a flowchart to be understood and adopted. So the first one is to make the process simple. The second way to love the process is to find joy in the journey. So making the goal the singular focus means that we aren't able to find joy until we've accomplished it. So by learning to enjoy the process, really enjoy and embrace the struggle, we can find happiness in the everyday actions. So finding joy in the journey, joy in the struggle, allows us to praise ourselves for small victories and truly settle into the process and understand that this new struggle is actually a way of life, and it becomes integrated into what it is that we do. Number 3 is to make patience your friend. So we often set goals for the sole purpose of expediting our success. We think, if I can just get this done, then I'll be happy. If I can just get that done, then I'll be happy. So the pursuit of happiness is in itself a negative experience because it assumes that we don't have something we want. So accepting the present and becoming patient in our journey allows us to see only what is real right now. Patience allows us to suspend judgment long enough to make informed decisions. So the fourth and final part of learning to love the process is to celebrate the small wins. Focusing on the process doesn't have to mean that we defer gratification until the larger milestone is achieved. Quite the contrary, a focus on the process allows us to see small changes along the way and have an opportunity to celebrate these changes while just continuing to move forward. So by celebrating the small wins, we create momentum and energy to keep moving forward. All right, so recap of those four. Number one, make the process simple. Too often when we're striving to make change, we overcomplicate the process. Number two, find joy in the journey. If we learn to enjoy the struggle, we can find happiness in everyday actions. Number three, making patience our friend. Okay, so if we accept the present and become patient, our journey allows us to see what's real right now and allows us to keep moving forward. And number four, to celebrate wins. Focusing on the process allows us to not just defer gratification until the end. It allows us to make informed decisions as we go and create momentum and energy moving forward. All right, guys. So that's it for today. Goals are a super useful tool in creating our lives, but we mustn't put so much belief in their ability to move us forward towards our best lives. They can provide direction, and they can even push us forward in the short term, but over time, a well-designed, well-executed process is always going to help us create our desired results. Committing to the process is what makes the difference. That's it, guys. I hope you have a great day. I hope you enjoyed this session. Hope to see you next time.